in America, we have millions of people that go to these massive state schools that have humanities departments that are not reading the great books, that do not have a tutoring system, that are unfortunately laced with the most anti-Western thought imaginable.
Charlie Kirk takes on a self-assured university student who tries to defend elite institutions, government funding for colleges, and the value of liberal arts degrees. Charlie Kirk doesn't just hold his ground. Charlie Kirk fires back with sharp facts, clear logic, and a whole lot of confidence. From exposing bloated endowments at schools like Harvard to questioning the purpose of modern education, Charlie Kirk shows exactly why he's one of the most fearless voices in these debates.
So first of all, my first question, or my only question is, you've advocated and applauded the reducing and removing of public funding for universities on the grounds they promote ideological biases. Given that universities play a critical role in driving national innovation, research, and upward mobility, especially through federally funded grants, how do you reconcile this position with the broader societal value that higher education institutes offer?
Well, they can, but in Harvard's case, for example, who's getting their funding pulled, they have a $50 billion endowment. Just so we are clear, in pounds, that would be like what, 42 billion, 45 billion? I mean, I'm trying to learn the conversion rate here. I mean, it's an extraordinary amount of money. They can either use their endowments to fund it, and if you have certain behavior and certain practices, then you should not get federal funding. Harvard is in direct violation of the United States Supreme Court fair admissions case, which says you cannot discriminate people based on the color of their skin. Go ahead.
But isn't the whole point of it, you can't use endowments like that. The point of
they can.
The point of an endowment is to manage a fund through perpetuity. Cambridge has an endowment, and that endowment allows professorships to be funded to allow for research into sciences. That's the whole point of an endowment.
Hold on, you just said it funds research into sciences. That's what they should do with their monstrosity of an endowment.
Yeah, but the endowment is,
the interest alone on their endowment could fund the entire research and development budget of most Ivy League schools. They have a $50 billion endowment. Even like a podunk money manager in America can earn a 7 to 10% investment in the markets the last couple of years. That's $5 billion of returns that endowment could then reinvest in whatever they want. Instead, Harvard has become a hedge fund with a radical school attached. And I think that's very wrong for US taxpayers to continue to subsidize.
But it's not just Harvard. You've called on colleges being a scam. You've constantly attacked higher education institutes. You've attacked liberal arts as a scam. For example, like a lot of conservatives, Peter Thiel studied philosophy at Stanford. Ronald Reagan studied sociology. A lot of them did study liberal arts, and you keep undermining these august institutions which have provided a lot for society. Like society's backbones have been universities and higher learning institutes, and yet you keep attacking them.
Well, they used to be largely, but again, I don't want to speak too much about this country, but in America, they don't represent fundamental American values. You know, Peter Thiel, after he graduated Stanford, wrote an entire book criticizing college and then paying people not to go to college. So Peter Thiel, who spoke at this very school, and you guys had a great conversation with him, you know that he believes college is such a scam, he would pay people $100,000 a year for 20 years straight not to go to college? So not exactly a good argument in your favor. Peter Thiel, who got a philosophy degree, made billions of dollars, and has now forked over tens of millions of dollars for people not to go to US universities and colleges.
Yeah, but it's not just Peter Thiel.
I know, but you mentioned him, I didn't. But to complete the point is that...
Ernst Thomas went to, did liberal arts.
Look, in America, there are far too many people going to college. We need people to become welders, electricians, people that work with their hands. There is a major trade deficit problem in the United States. We have 11 million well-paying jobs that we cannot find enough labor for, and instead we have a lot of people going to university to go study North African lesbian poetry. It might sound good, but it doesn't necessarily, A, either development, the content, the character, or the development of the soul, and B, it does not necessarily also give you the skills necessary. Some college is good for you. I'm a big proponent of Hillsdale College.
Guys, can we please be quiet?
I believe Hillsdale College is America's greatest college, and I'm a big proponent of that. But I would ask a question. In your own words, what do you believe the purpose of college is? In your own words, what do you believe the purpose of college is?
It's critical engagement. But coming back to your point on lesbian poetry or whatever,
North African lesbian poetry.
North African lesbian poetry. So in the morning, I actually had a lecture on development policy. And one of the key authors on sort of development economics is Nussbaum, who talks about how liberal arts sort of engages you critically. And one could argue, even North African lesbian poetry, I don't think that's a degree, I think that's just a module within a degree, is...
Maybe.
Yeah. That makes you
The fact you don't
engage.
know shows how rotten to the core universities have become.
You're taking one example and telling conservatives and hordes of young people that college is a scam. College isn't a scam. I mean, I took my mum down to a pub just down the road where Watson and Crick announced DNA. College...
Guys, can we... Okay, wait one second.
If college is a scam, then DNA wouldn't have been discovered. With cancer research...
Yes, hold on a second. Yes, you're right. At this specific university, you guys split the atom. You had Sir Isaac Newton. You had some of the greatest minds of the West. I don't know about what's happening here, and I'm not going to criticize it. But at most colleges in the West, they've gone away from places of inquiry and appreciation of what is good and what is beautiful and into this incessant oppression Olympics of trying to deconstruct the core canon that is our birth certificate. I don't know if that's happening here. It's certainly...
That's not true, though.
In America, it is objectively true, okay?
That isn't true.
Again, no, first of all, they removed Western civilization as a core course in Stanford in the 1990s. They tried to bring it back with petitions, and the university said, no, teaching Western civilization is racist. Shakespeare is not taught at major, let me finish. Shakespeare is not taught at major universities across America because it's deemed as racist. I talked to some students earlier in the English department, and they said, hey, I'm studying Shakespeare. I said, that's refreshing because in a lot of US schools, they don't teach Shakespeare because he's called racist. You would be surprised at how wretched to the core some of these colleges have become in America.
If you look at the Global Innovation Index, America, which is predominantly, a lot of their majors are in humanities and liberal arts, they're number 2 on the Global Innovation Index. China is somewhere near 13. If you look at every metric, Fortune 1000 CEOs, 40% did humanities and liberal arts. There is a value in liberal arts, yet you're criticizing
Yes,
it.
and I'm going to keep on criticizing it. Also, the vast majority of liberal arts graduates do not respect freedom of speech. That is an empirical poll. They increasingly do not have reverence or gratitude for the United States of America. They don't care about the core values of the U.S. Constitution. If you want to go to college, that's fine. But in our country, 40% of kids that enter college do not graduate. The kids that do graduate, half of them end up getting jobs that do not require any sort of college degree. There are all these made-up degrees. In America, I know it's different than the experience you might be having here. Your tutoring system here is objectively great. I'm glad you guys have it. The class sizes in America are 400 to 500 students, sometimes per introductory course, to go hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt, study things that don't matter, to find jobs that do not exist. And so let me just make one final point, is that, of course, some people should be going to college. But generally in the United States of America, it has become a racket of debt, it has become a burden, and a place where we're actually not putting our best and brightest into the job field itself to be equipped for the jobs of the future. Instead, we have a lot of baristas at Starbucks with philosophy degrees.
You also mentioned indoctrination. As per the Oxford Dictionary's definition of indoctrination, it means that you take a belief and you can't critically observe that belief. Turning Point USA has over 30,000 chapters, 3,000 chapters across US universities. So are you arguing that students, including conservatives, lack the critical thinking skills to sort of decide political ideologies, political beliefs, that they're so dumbfounded that they can't decide for themselves what's right and what's wrong?
This is where Charlie Kirk just completely drops the hammer. Charlie Kirk lays out the whole scam. People take on massive debt for useless degrees and end up working at Starbucks. It's brutal honesty. But Charlie Kirk is right. This part is the turning point where Charlie Kirk shows the system is broken and no one else is bold enough to say it.
And that your whole premise is on the fact that students like us, we lack critical thought in deciding what is taught in schools.
Again, I'm not using Cambridge as the school that I think of, but in America, we have millions of people that go to these massive state schools that have humanities departments that are not reading the great books, that do not have a tutoring system, that are unfortunately laced with the most anti-Western thought imaginable. I don't really quite following what one thing has to do with the other, why 3,000 chapters has something to do with your indictment. Maybe you can clarify, but I think we're out of time.
You can clarify, but then it'll move on.
In general, colleges should be a place that lift you up, to what is good, true, and beautiful, to study the great things that have been, to develop your soul and develop your character. Character in Greek literally means like tattoo, to etched within you. Far too often, colleges create ungrateful, pessimistic, and nihilistic revolutionaries that want to tear down what was before and instead have no alternative to build the future, and the West is suffering because of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I disagree, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
By the end of the debate, Charlie Kirk made it crystal clear why so many young people are waking up. Charlie Kirk exposed the truth about inflated degrees, biased institutions, and the damage being done by universities that forgot their purpose, whether it was defending blue-collar jobs or fighting for free speech. Charlie Kirk never backed down. This wasn't just a win. It was a masterclass in clarity and courage. Another reason why Charlie Kirk is dominating these debates.